If you can get these 6 things right, then you'll be able to learn AI and automation in no time. You could start implementing it within your own business today, or maybe even build a side hustle selling your skills to other businesses. So I'll take you back to last year. I got my very first AI and automation client on Upwork. And since then, I've built a top rated profile on Upwork. I've launched my own AI and automation agency and combined between those earned over $40,000 doing so. And I've also launched a community teaching others, 490 others, how to master and sell AI automation as a skill. And fast forward to today, the best part is I learned all of that in just 6 months with a small technical background and without having to write a single line of code. So if you as well want to capitalize on this new opportunity, this should be your sign to stop watching from the sidelines and start taking some action. Because in this video, I'm going to try and condense my whole experience into just a 6-part roadmap that's super easy to follow. And it's the roadmap that I'd follow if I was starting today from scratch as a complete beginner. And knowing what I know now, this could help you get there even faster. So make sure you have your notes ready. Let's jump into step 1. So this one might sound really obvious, but the area that I'd start with in number 1 is actually just understanding your own end goals. So when you're learning AI automation or workflow automation or any of that stuff, you should actually probably have in mind what you want to get out of it at the end. Are you just learning it to learn a skill? Are you a business owner that wants to cut 10, 15, 20 hours off your team's work week or your own work week? Are you a solo business owner that wants to save your time and actually not scale your team, but instead scale your effectiveness? Are you looking to turn a 3-hour, very manual process that you're currently doing into a 15-minute automation, and maybe you're focused on that very single task that you want to automate? So are you a business owner, or are you actually learning to master the skill so that you can sell it to others and actually make your first dollar online? So when I set out to actually learn automations, it's because I wanted to work remotely. I wanted to do something where I was in control. And I also loved making processes more efficient and more effective. So automation came very naturally to something that I wanted to pursue. So I went to Upwork and I actually just looked up all the different jobs that were available on Upwork. So I started searching some basic ones like automation. And at the time, there was about maybe 15 to 30 posts a day coming up. But you can see that actually now automation is so hot in the market. We've got 8 minutes ago, 1 hour ago, 1 hour ago, 1 hour ago. Like, I don't know if you can see the number of different results here, but we can go to 50 pages and you can see that there's still more than 4 or 5. So like 200 to 300 automation jobs out there. You can then go to something specific, which at the time I was actually learning NAN through the NAN forums, through the NAN materials. And I'd actually searched something like NAN. And back then there was probably, 5 applications or jobs posted every day around NAN, 10 if you were lucky. So it was very slim pickings and you had to decide exactly what you wanted to do. But you can see that now NAN is absolutely thriving. So you've got all of these different jobs that you have a chance to earn money on, paying $25 to $55 an hour, $15 to $45 an hour, $1,000, $3K plus spent on this, and they want an intermediate level. So you can see that there's a huge opportunity and a huge demand in something like selling this skill, especially on Upwork, where you've already got the distribution advantage, and all you need to do is actually have a good profile, some portfolio projects there, and then you're in a good position to sell. And you can very quickly start demanding average rates of $50 to $100 an hour. So if you're somewhere where that stretches a lot further, then that's going to be life-changing for you potentially. So you need to decide whether you want to implement it in your own business, or you're looking to sell that to other businesses and master the skill first. And then you'll probably end up adopting a bit of a hybrid approach, actually. So it's a bit of a catch-22. You need some portfolio projects to show to business owners who are trying to hire you if you want to sell this. So like any job, you can't just turn up with 0 experience and say that you're perfect for the job. So you'll probably end up adopting a bit of a hybrid approach. You'll build out some really useful business automations to form part of portfolio pieces. You could learn how to solve your own problems first if you're currently an employee of a business. Learn how to automate little day-to-day tasks that you do in that business. And then ultimately, you're going to turn those solutions into sellable templates or pieces inside your portfolio. And if I just go to my freelance profile here, we'll be able to scroll down to the portfolio here, which is all the different projects that I display on my portfolio. And this is so outdated now, but this got me in the opportunity to get my first client, to get my second client. And then once you get your first and second client, etc., you can see that the 5-star reviews start rolling in, and then it encourages other people to hire you because other people have given you social proof. So if I look on my fourth page here, you'll see that these are, or third page here, you'll see that these are super basic workflows. So all you need are a few key business use cases. Like in this example, any business is going to need to take information from a competitor website or their supplier websites and turn it into a format that's really clean and readable. Like every business is going to use that. We've then got scraping search page results. So again, really easy, simple flow. You can see it's made up of 10 nodes. You could literally make this in a few hours once you've learned the basics. And then that's a really good flow that you can show to other businesses and sort of get yourself in the door, so to speak. And the reason this is so important, right, is all of these things take a long time. So if you're going to be building automations, you want to be really clear from the outset who you're trying to impress, what niche you're trying to go into, so that actually the end result or the items or the workflows that you have in your portfolio are really relevant to who you might be targeting. So that might be solving your own business problems, or it might be looking at what work is available on Upwork and actually starting there and trying to solve those problems first for your portfolio. Now, the second thing kind of goes without saying, but it's actually understanding the AI and automation landscape. So you've probably seen the emergence of AI in the last 12 to 24 months in particular. And in particular, the no-code AI automation space is really taking off. And no-code AI automations allow you to connect all of your different software and automate workflows. So what we mean by that is, so say you use Microsoft email, and perhaps you want to summarize your emails every day, or perhaps you use Notion to store all your company knowledge base. And maybe you want to connect your company knowledge base to all of your meeting transcripts. So maybe you have a tool to collect your meeting transcripts. And maybe that's also connected to Google Calendar so it can attend your meetings. So all of these different use cases where we often have disparate software in our businesses, workflow automation helps to connect those. And then AI takes it a step further. AI helps us take a little bit of the thinking out of those repetitive processes. Whereas the AI part of these softwares is how do we augment some of the thinking work that we conventionally have to do. So as an example of workflow automation versus AI, you could have customer support. So in the first example, you have the workflow automation, which are just like standard FAQ answers. So you often have on your website FAQs. It has a question and an answer. Workflow automation would be able to process that. We have a specific question that relates to a specific answer. But the problem comes in when a customer has a question that doesn't fall in the FAQs. We can either continue to expand all of our FAQs and answer every single nuance of a question, or we could use AI to take the essence of a question and pull the most relevant information based on the question. So AI allows us to enhance those. And there's various workflow automation platforms out there, some more powerful than others. So you might be familiar with Zapier. And this is probably the most user-friendly workflow automation platform out there because it connects to thousands of softwares that you use day to day. But it also has these plug and play steps that are very specific to an action you might want to take. Now, that obviously comes at a cost, and these workflow automation platforms like Zapier are significantly more expensive. You're going to pay per execution. So every task you're producing, you're going to pay for that specific software to do that specific task. So you can see you could easily rack up 10,000 tasks per month because every single software you're connecting, say you have 4 different softwares connected, if you're running something once an hour, every single day, you're probably going to start hitting the thousands of tasks per month. And it's soon going to start costing you, $100, $170 a month, which is actually going to add up over time. And it's significantly more if you're not paying yearly, you're paying monthly for that. It's a space that's rapidly evolving. There's a new model coming out every week. There's new providers. There's new ways to connect to things. There's new ways to prompt agents. Something like Zapier is still in their beta phase with all their AI tools, as with something like Make.com. So Make.com is probably a little bit more flexible than Zapier, allows you to connect to a fair few different platforms, but their AI agent features, for example, are only just coming out in beta, whereas something like NAN is built for AI workflow automation. So it's kind of future-proofing you. If you were to choose one platform, I'd 100% go with NAN. But the key to all of these are they automate repetitive thinking tasks And with any of those, you don't need any programming experience. There's probably a steeper learning curve with N8N for non-technical users, but there are ways to get around that. Beginner guides, beginner videos that teach you all the fundamentals from basics. So within 3 to 4 hours of viewing those videos, you will be up to a really good standard there. So once you've chosen a platform, the other thing you need to make sure is actually you're building for real world applications. So there's no point building things that people aren't going to use, that you're not going to use yourself, that clients aren't interested in. So I'd recommend just going straight to Upwork for this and actually just have a look over the last, if we type in N8N AI, for example, what we'll be able to see are all of the different jobs that were advertised in the last week. And you'll get an idea of specific things that people are requesting over and over. So we've got this AI agent and automation specialist in VAPI, which is a voice agent, automation developer for real estate agencies. So maybe you want to specialize in an industry that you're familiar with. Build an AI chatbot. There's a lot of different AI chatbot things out there. This one's a bit more generic. They just want somebody with expertise to help them out. N8N and NoCodeDB. So it's worth, and NoCodeDB is like an Airtable alternative. It's worth noting that actually maybe you start somewhere where you have some skills already. If you're used to using Airtable, maybe N8N plus Airtable is a good starting point for you here. AI newsletter automation. So that's something that would be great to put on your portfolio because lots of businesses run newsletters. Marketing workflow development. So if you're in marketing already, then maybe this is a natural next step. You have the industry knowledge, and all you need to do is apply that industry knowledge to workflow automations. And you get the picture. You can search here for different automations and find a niche that suits you before you start building out any workflows. And that will save you a lot of time in the long run because you'll have really clear scope of work for when you come to actually build it out. And this relates into the next point, which is actually focusing on processes, not tools. So if you want to stand out in this market, you need to think in the terms that a business owner is thinking when they come to automate a certain process. At the end of the day, they don't actually care whether you're using VAPI, Make, N8N, or Zapier to automate these processes. They just care that we're taking them from a start point, doing something in the middle, which is our workflow automation, and getting them to the outcome that they desire. So whenever you're designing these processes or setting up your profile, you need to think about what business problems you actually are solving with this automation, not the tools you are using to solve that. And then we touched on it before, but actually AI is allowing us to automate some of that thinking work and not just tasks anymore. So you're probably used to traditional automation being, here's a starting point. If this condition happens, take this action. But actually with the latest capabilities with AI, we're not just doing if this, then that conditions anymore. The AI is actually able to take those decisions and decide the most appropriate action based on a set of outcomes, which means for you, there's a lot more processes that could be augmented or assisted with AI than you probably think. And you can get a really good idea of that by just going through all those Upwork listings and seeing what people are actually asking for. So much is possible now. And then finally, you have to become familiar with all the core tools. So like I said, my choice would be N8N as my central connector between all my software. We then have different AI services. So you'd have to become familiar with the different large language model providers like OpenAI, who do ChatGPT, Anthropic, who do Claude, and then tools like OpenRouter, which allow you to just use one password or one key to connect to all of those different models and use the ones that are most appropriate for that use case. So for example, we've got critical thinking models, which are great at thinking tasks through. We've also got models that are trained on writing and better at creating content and marketing copy, etc. So you need to think about those core tools. And then obviously we need to also think about the business tools you already use. So if you're using the Microsoft platform, then you're probably using Outlook and Microsoft Calendar and Teams. And you want to start by considering how AI could augment those tools. So the next step that I would take is actually going to the basics. So once you've chosen the tool, and in this case, I'm going to talk about N8N, it's actually mastering those N8N fundamentals. So why would I choose N8N? Simply put, you are flexible in how you host it. So what do we mean by that? You can very quickly set up an account with N8N and start running workflows at around $25 per month. Or you can actually host this on a server yourself. So you could go to a service like ls.io and extremely easy, in less than 5 minutes, set this up. And I've got another tutorial on that. But what that means is you have control over the data, but also in terms of the pricing of self-hosting means you have unlimited executions of the software. So unlike Zapier, where we said it's going to cost $100 to $200 a month, if you're running a lot of different things here, N8N is going to cost you maximum $20 to $30 a month when you're hosting yourself. It also means you have control over your own data. And like I've already mentioned, the AI integrations and the AI upgrades and the speed at which N8N release updates is by far the most advanced workflow automation. So 100% would be my recommendation on where to start. If you were starting from scratch, I'd recommend learning about the following things. So if I just jump into my N8N environment and we create a new workflow, there are a few key things that you need to know about. And N8N helps you walk through these. But I've also got a 4-hour complete masterclass that takes you from not knowing anything about N8N through to building business applications and covering all of the concepts from the foundations through to the more complicated concepts, which I'll link here as well. But for a quick run through of the most important ones, we've basically got triggers. So triggers are just a step that starts your workflow. So we might have something that runs when we receive a Slack message, something that runs when we receive an email. So that would be on an app event. We might have just something we want to test manually here. So we can have this test workflow trigger and we can run that. Or we might commonly have something that runs every day or every hour. So we might have a time-based schedule that triggers there. So the first foundation is like, what event is going to cause your automation to run? The second thing you need to learn about are nodes. So nodes in N8N just connect your different software. So if we go to action in an app here, say we are using Outlook, this is an Outlook node and it's got various actions as part of that. So for example, we could send an email message through Outlook. So down here we have send a message. This would open up a node and we've got all of these different resources. So we've got message and we're trying to send here, but we can take all of these different actions and you can see how simple this is because it's got all of the actions defined for us. We don't need to write any code here. And all we do is connect that up to our time trigger. So every hour, we're going to take this action. So that is what nodes are, but there's a lot more to it in terms of understanding how to fill out the different operations and actions, etc. The third thing I'd learn about is the data transformation. So N8N follows a very clear step of data transformation. So we have our inputs all on our left-hand side of our node here. We are taking some action or transforming, doing the data transformation in the middle here. And in this case, we're sending an email. So we might be saying, okay, we'll take a name from the to column, we'll add a subject, we'll add a message, and then it's going to show us the outputs. Was it successful? Was it unsuccessful? And often we won't just have a 2-step process here because we can send an email ourselves. That's not very difficult. But we might be saying, okay, every hour, we're going to send an email, and based on the response, we're going to take another action. So you can see how the inputs, transformation, and outputs could then be used in further apps. Say we want to send a Slack notification to say that something's been confirmed. The outputs are then used as the inputs to the next node. And then you're also going to need to learn about executions. So every time we execute these workflows, we have these executions that show us all of our data that's passed from one node to the next. And that's really important for testing out different things and seeing your historic runs. So if you think you've got hundreds of these working every day, you often want to come in and troubleshoot, and you'll be able to go into the historic execution here and see what ran and what didn't run and what you need to update in the flow. Touched at a very high level there, but check out the masterclass if you're interested in learning N8N in full detail, and you will go from the complete basics to actually learning it. Once you've understood the basics, I recommend starting with very simple workflows. You often come in expecting to change the world, but you're probably better off if you just start with some very, very simple, connect two softwares together kind of workflows. So it could be somebody submits a form on your website through WordPress, and actually you're just going to give them a personalized response as an output. Or you take some data from a Google Sheet, you're going to transform that data, and then you're going to put it into your company knowledge Notion. Or on an hourly basis, you collect some data from a competitor's website, or a weekly basis, and you turn it into a report. So start with very simple work. And this will help you understand the capabilities of a workflow automation platform without getting stuck in all the weeds and still sticking at this high level of understanding what process you're trying to replace, not what tool you're trying to use for it. And then the final part of this is about learning resources. So there are a ton of different resources, school communities, N8N documentation that you can check out. But I'd highly recommend going to the N8N templates. And actually, before you start building out any of these, you can see they've got 1,680 workflow automation templates here. And if you scroll down, they've got a few different use cases, trending AI templates, etc. down here. But say you're using Outlook, just type in Outlook and you will be able to see the most popular Outlook templates that have been published here or the most recent. So with a platform like N8N, you never need to start from scratch. You might have a process that you want to automate, but never start from scratch. Always come here first. And maybe, for example, you want to send a daily newsletter using Excel, Outlook, and AI, or you want to change a few things about this, but you can click into these templates. And actually, Jim has built this template out for you that builds a newsletter and pulls and summarizes latest information. So you could replace just a few nodes there and actually get this working for your use case as well. So it's a massive shortcut in your journey to building out workflows here. Once I've got a grasp of the fundamentals, I then advise to start thinking in workflows and not code. And we've talked about this a little bit, but breaking down processes into their actual individual steps rather than thinking about the tools that you're going to solve them is probably the first thing I'd do if I came to solve a problem. So I've just found an example Upwork job that's got some details and we can build this out quickly here, but it's for the N8N AI newsletter automation system. So we've got a project overview here. They basically want an AI newsletter system that can discover content from elsewhere, create content ideas, write and publish to Beehive. So it just uses their tech scope. They want a media agent that does content discovery. They want an ideas agent, which does the newsletter structure. They want a content editor. So what we can literally do is go to N8N and demonstrate how we would build something like this out in a new workflow. So we're basically going to probably be scraping something every day. So the way I'd always lay this out would be to bring in the sticky notes here. And I'd basically say, okay, we want a time trigger. And then if we just copy and paste that. So it's going to be scheduled by time. We're going to get content from elsewhere. We're going to then use content to create ideas, content ideas. We're then going to review it and make edits based on some rules. And we're going to copy paste that. And we are going to then, I think, publish to Beehive, we said. So you're getting the idea that actually you should, I can't remember how to spell Beehive, but anyway, something like that. You should not jump straight into the build work, but think about these things in terms of holistic processes and what are the inputs and outputs. So if I went to this Upwork job, when I would reply to this job, I'd want a clear idea of how I'd actually achieve that goal. And I'd want to understand the inputs, the processes, and the outputs. So for the time trigger, I can now start building out the flow. So we've got the schedule trigger here, and you can see how quickly you can build this stuff out. You can get content. So we're going to scrape content probably using a HTTP request. So we'll put that there. We're then going to use that content to create content ideas. So just thinking out loud, what I could do for that is we are getting, let's say, from a certain news site or a certain competitor's website, etc. We're then using that content. So that's going to be passed in the outputs here to our own LLM chain or AI agent there that will then be able to create ideas. So we can call this the content generation. We'd obviously do things like put in the prompt here where we tell it, like we do with ChatGPT, what to do with that content. But then we might have a second or LLM chain here, AI node, that just reviews and makes edits. So this would be the content editor. And then we would publish to Beehive. So let's see if Beehive is in here. Beehive. Let's pretend they're using ActiveCampaign, for example. If there's no inbuilt node, we would just use the API and connect to that with a HTTP request like we did here. But actually, let's just say, okay, let's just do that. So we'll grab a HTTP request and we're going to post that or publish it to Beehive. So you can see how within about 3 minutes there, I was able to take a full scope of work and actually turn it into a mock process. And what I did there was I thought about the inputs and the outputs and how I'd get from the start through each stage rather than worrying specifically about the tools at every stage. And this is so important because when you go back to communicate with those clients, they're not going to care about what tools you're using. They're just going to care that you've understood the brief and the problems they're facing and you've got an idea of how to solve it. So doing it at this level first allows you to go back to that advert, for example, and say, and film a Loom video. Hey guys, I've looked through your brief. I've done a draft flow of what this might look like. It's not complete yet, but this is the idea that I'm getting to solve your pain point. Does this hit the mark? What other things would you like to include here? And that puts you ahead of 90% of others applying for these jobs. And all it takes is around 10 minutes. So this goes into the next part, which is starting with simple workflows. So that was a really good example of a workflow that had 3 or 4 different nodes. Always start with those and build out your knowledge as you perfect the simpler workflows and gradually add complexity. We've talked about the templates already, so 100% leverage templates. So in this example, we would go back to the template library and just type in newsletter. We've already got 7 template results that could be relevant for that AI job or the workflow job that was posted on Upwork that would immediately give us a head start there. And start with simple ideas. Go to Upwork, look at the things that people are actually requesting for businesses, and actually just start building some of those out for your portfolio. That might be a content ideas generator that's then posting to various social media platforms. It might be preparing meeting notes. So it might look at profiles of your customers on LinkedIn and prepare notes in advance of the meeting and send them to you so you don't have to go and do that research. Or it might be like a customer service chatbot where there's a simple input of a customer conversation. There's a knowledge base that the chatbot reaches to, and it's able to give quick answers. These are very simple workflows that you can 100% start with and get done quickly. Only after you've perfected some really simple workflows would I consider adding AI to any of them. So you need to understand the power of general automation and how much you can stretch that with the logic of if this, then that, before you start adding any AI into the flow. AI will definitely enhance it because it takes away some of the thinking tasks like we went earlier, but it needs to be leveraged in the right way. It can absolutely improve the workflows, but also you can use AI so many times when it's not needed and it's going to cost you a lot more. But when it's used well, it could result in some of these things, like a 70% cost reduction in customer support. If, for example, you have an automated chatbot for 90% of queries and then it escalates only the 10% way we need a customer service rep, it can 5x the content output. So imagine writing SEO blog articles for a company. That must take a tremendous amount of time. You have to do a topic structure, an outline for each. You have to interlink them. All of that can actually be at least planned using AI and workflow automation, if not 90% done and just edited by a human. Some companies are actually choosing to do 100% AI generated and then much faster data processing. So all of the manual tasks that you're connecting together can be done significantly quicker using these workflow automation tools. However, AI is powerful only if you know how to use it. If you don't have effective prompt structures or you've never even heard of a prompt, then it's the same old saying that poor data in is going to give you poor outputs out. The same rings true here. You need to know how to use it, what a prompt is, how to structure a prompt. And I've got lots of content that I refer to when I talk about structuring prompts. Some of the open source ones you can go to are Claude Prompting Guide, and Anthropic's given a really good guide of prompt engineering, how you should structure different prompts, etc. I've got some resources on my channel and how I specifically structure prompts, and I use my own critics framework. And that's just an acronym for all of the different elements that I've got to include in a prompt to make it really specific. And that includes the role, which is obviously the second letter, but it's switched around with the first. You need to tell the AI tool what role it has. We've got the constraints next. So what do you want it to give you at the end? But also what rules should it obey? So those are the rules. We've got the instructions, which you can think of as a step-by-step guide of the actions it needs to take and in what order. We've got tools. So if we're connecting to external tools like databases or the web, then we often need to tell it how to interact with those tools and what tools and functions it has access to. We've got the input. So what information are we giving it that it can leverage? I'm really testing my understanding of critics here. We've got C, the last C, which is I've actually forgotten the last C, funnily enough. So we've got the conclusions. So what output are we expecting from this? And then finally, we've got the solutions or error handling. So what is the AI expected to do if it gets this wrong? So we've got a clear structure in how we write prompts to get the best outputs. But also you need to build in safeguards for this. So AI is not perfect. If you are, for example, using an AI customer service chatbot, then you want to build in safeguards so that actually sometimes they want to escalate to a human and actually we can get the AI under certain circumstances and certain terms to reach out for a human rep. But there also might be things where we get AI to generate content and we want to give it feedback so that it iterates on that content rather than having to go back and forth manually with it. So AI can be super powerful, but only once you understand the basics of workflow automation will you need to start working with it. And then finally, we've got build, share, and monetize. So only once you have mastered the skill of NAN, workflow automation, and AI, which by the way, can be absolutely fast tracked if you join the right communities. You're talking 3 to 4 weeks to absolutely master the skill here. And even whilst you're working a full-time job, you can do an hour a day and get there in a month to 6 weeks. Even after all that, I would then focus, if your aim is to sell, on portfolio projects. So, like we said, go through Upwork, have a look at all the latest jobs for a given day, and just do exactly as I did. Go out into N8N, structure what the workflow might look like, and actually test that workflow. Figure out what's not working about it or what wouldn't work in the use case, fix it. And then once you've got that, for a couple of different projects, maybe say 5 to 10, very quick projects that you can build in an hour each, you will have a full portfolio of projects that you can display on your Upwork profile. And here's some examples that you could use: lead generation, content automation, we've already spoken about, customer service chatbots. All of these are used in most businesses. So it'll be really powerful to showcase this and make it easier to get work. I'd recommend, if you're serious about this, joining a community. I obviously run one, which I'm not going to plug here, but you can check it out in the description below. But a community is really powerful in a lot of ways. Number one, it keeps you accountable to actually achieving your goals. Number two, it saves you all the headaches. So, for example, when I started, there weren't many communities apart from the N8N forums where you could discuss your problems, you could share templates, and you could get direct advice on how to speed up your journey from zero to mastery. There are also additional benefits that come from that. You could get jobs literally through those communities. But most of all, it's like motivation and accountability and speed. If you want to spend 6 months learning this like I did, then it's going to be free, but it's going to be a more painful roadmap. And you could get to monetization or saving your business a lot of money significantly quicker by joining the right community. Once you have all the infrastructure in place, you've learned the skill, it's then time to get out there and sell the skill. So you can follow lots of different guides out there on monetizing this specifically. We touched on going to Upwork, where actually you can access projects at a small fee. So you pay, when you apply on Upwork, you pay maybe $1 to $2 per application. But once you've got a few portfolio projects on your page, you'll very quickly pick up your first project with the right support, with the right guidance, with the right proposal frameworks, which you can get in communities. And you'll be able to secure your first client and start making money from this. You'll very quickly earn a return on investment back there. There are other ways to monetize this. You can literally sell your templates on the N8N community. So you can see that Derek here has got one up for $20. So you can monetize these flows and sell them directly through the community. You can sell it through your own website, but the community is visible to everyone. So you've immediately got that distribution advantage. You can pursue launching your own agency. And this is what my community is all about. How do you learn this skill of AI automation? How do you master it? And then how do you sell it? And how do you go from one client to actually selling to multiple clients, including cold email outreach, which is one of the most effective methods to get clients on board in your niche. And then once you're selling to those clients, there is the option for monthly maintenance retainers. So for very little additional work, you can get an additional couple of $1,000s a month through just maintaining the system and making sure that everything is working for your client and up to date. All of that feeds into your first client strategy. So it's all about targeting businesses with repetitive processes. Say for one client, you've built a customer service chatbot. What other businesses on Upwork are looking for customer service chatbots that actually would take you 10% of the work to customize it for that business because you've already got a working chatbot in your portfolio? So that's a quick summary of what I would do if I was starting AI automations from scratch. You saw in my journey that it took me 6 months to learn the skill, master the skill, and sell the skill. Within a couple of weeks, I was immediately monetizing this. So it's very, very achievable with the right support. Thank you so much for watching.